Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch big games from the Women's Super League live on Sky Sports.
This is News Talk.
Now we are very much continuing our build-up to the World Cup. So Argentina, third in the world rankings. They are on a 35-game unbeaten run, which leaves them too short of the Italian record of 37 games. So 35 games unbeaten. The Guardian says of Argentina, this is the first time Argentina arrive at a World Cup in peace. There is team spirit. There is hard work. They are a well-oiled machine, apparently. So for more, very happy to say, the always brilliant Marcela Mora y Araujo joins us on the line from Argentina. Hi, Marcela.
Hello there, hi.
So if the Guardian are right here, I suspect they are, then Argentine football is in rude health. Never before have they arrived at a World Cup in such a state of confidence and peace about their setup.
Well, I think it's true. Argentina are in a good place at the moment, the national squad, not the country. And there's a lot of enthusiasm. I have to say, in 2002, Argentina arrived in peak condition with a massive stretch of unbeaten games, great record, first in the group to qualify, and it was absolutely disastrous. Argentina left after 3 games, the earliest exit in God knows how long, and it wasn't due to anything going desperately wrong at the World Cup itself. In Russia, the last World Cup 2018, it was a disaster, and you could see that everything was imploding and the team were a mess and the Football Association was a mess and everything was incredibly difficult. But in 2002, there was harmony. We had the best manager in the world, Marcelo Bielsa. The players were ready, and it just didn't happen. And I think that's something one should hold as a possibility, because Argentina is so enthusiastic at the moment. The country's completely geared up. And I think anything that, it's just not a given. There's so much scope for tremendous disappointment, even though it is true that this is the best psychic anemic, in terms of spirit and football-wise, that the squad has been in a very long time. They're high on the Copa America win, and they are a good team. They gel. There's been a little bit of worry with injury, Lo Celso not being there, but there's other players. There's always other players that can fulfill. Everyone's ready, and Messi is at his prime, without a doubt. So a lot is given. A lot of the conditions are there.
What could go wrong? So if we jump back to 2018 for a second. So Jorge Sampaoli's tenure comes to a very dispiriting end, as you've referenced. Last 16 exit in Russia. And then Lionel Scaloni, who is still the manager, he was an assistant to Sampaoli. He took over very much on an interim basis. I don't think he'd ever been the main manager of a team before at club level, or certainly not international level. And it was very much supposed to be an interim arrangement. And yet here he is 4 years later. So I suspect he has surprised even himself at this stage. Marcela, what did he do that has proved so successful?
Well, it's a really lovely story, actually, of football growth. First of all, Lionel Scaloni is a low-profile, non-kind of confrontational figure. And he had, as the 2018 project crumbled, Scaloni had built quite a good rapport with a lot of the players. He stayed on, in theory, as the manager of the youth international squad, and then was asked to step in for just in a kind of interim measure for a couple of games. And he was working already with Pablo Aimar, who is another fantastic character in the kind of the cast of Argentinian football, elite football men. We've got some really, really good characters at the moment. both Scaloni and Aymar had been as youth players trained by Jose Pekerman, who was the true revolutionizer of the Argentinian youth system. And Scaloni says when they offered him to manage the first team, Pablo Aymar said, "You're mad. We can't do that." And he said, "Well, it's just a couple of games." But they had this working rapport with the players, so it wasn't like a completely new novice. Maradona was given the national team when he had very little managing experience, in a kind of bang and bluster of exorbitant showmanship. This was literally just an interim thing, and they worked well. And then the thing he did, which I think has been quite wise, was started to work with the players who were in Argentina or who were less known, younger players, and no Messi. And so he built a team that was, comfortable without this presence of some kind of superhuman, celebrity. But I have to say, hands up, there was a lot of criticism when Scaloni was first appointed, and I was among the people who were going, "This is just nonsense. We're never going to be serious again." And so he just calmly worked through that. He then appointed Walter Samuel and Roberto Ayala, who are also legends of yesteryear. Really good each at their position. Samuel's training the defenders, and they work really well. And then when Messi stepped in, there was already this well-oiled machine. And it's a bit of a cliche, but I do believe it very strongly. Messi only functions as part of a system, a cooperative system. He can't be the single guy that does it alone. So, then, there's a couple of documentaries and behind the scenes kind of compilations with the whole squad now doing the rounds on various platforms. And there's just so much anecdote there about how the young players wouldn't be scared off by Messi and just knocked on his bedroom door with a mate and a pack of cards, and how they all just did, then they had the experience of Copa America, which was the truly bonding and confidence boosting, because that really is Argentina's first major international trophy in decades. And also it seems to have lifted enormous pressure off Messi. I think I heard a journalist saying he was carrying a really heavy rucksack, and ironically the rucksack got lighter once you put the cup inside it. So I think that's a rather lovely image.
Something very wise on Scaloni's part to get the base in working order before introducing Messi, because I dare say Messi's mood probably affected by whether or not things are going well around him, especially when he's travelling all the way back to Argentina. And the Copa America win, as he lifted that trophy, it did look like you mentioned a bonding moment. It certainly looked like a bonding moment for him and the Argentinian public. And I don't know how many times the point has been made that there has been a slight standoffishness between Messi and the Argentinian public, certainly for a player of his great ability. And now as he heads into his 5th World Cup and having, lifted their first trophy in 28 years, I dare say he's never been more popular in Argentina.
Exactly that. I think it's really fascinating, and I'm not sure it's possible to explain exactly why or how. Even before the Copa America win, there was an enormous amount of the Argentinian football-loving public even, that loved him anyway. A lot of when he resigned in a huff in 2016 after missing a penalty in a final, a lot of voices were going like, "We don't care, we don't need a trophy, we love you anyway, come back." And he did come back, and in fact the project of the entire Argentinian Football Association and structure and industry was to lure Messi back. But something's shifted with this group, and it's also coincided with him leaving Barcelona and with Maradona dying. And I think in some ways, Maradona dying did kind of clear the way. I'm not saying Messi wanted him to die or anything like that, but somehow he is now the only living legend, as it were. And the Barcelona to Paris shift was really significant too, I think, because we thought of him as a one-man club who performed for that club and for nowhere else and no one else. And so in a way, I think Messi had some liberations, you know, the symbolic, metaphoric liberation from Diego physically present, and the real kind of labor workman man who chooses his future liberation of stepping out of Barcelona. But I wouldn't underestimate the excellence of the team around him and the players and the methodology that Scaloni and co, who are known as the Scaloneta in Argentina, you know, the project is the Scaloneta, have also played in this glorious moment, which I really hope lasts until, you know, next week.
Yeah, I'm sure. Such interesting observations. I hadn't considered what Maradona's passing might mean for Messi as the only living legend. And then the Barcelona point, I'm sure you're so right about that as well, because Argentinians must have looked at Messi, who was swept away to Barcelona as a child, and suspected that his true love was Barcelona, whereas now they're the one constant.
Yeah, it's really interesting, I think, and no doubt column inches will be devoted to it. But he does seem very well in himself, very at peace with his Argentinianness, which had been questioned for so many years, and very confident in a leader way on the pitch, which I think again, you know, is slightly new. This confident, assertive Messi that isn't shy or introverted or whatever it is he was. So it should bode well. There's a lovely clip which is from one of these programs of him enthusing the squad in the Copa America final and just saying, you know, what they have to play for. And it's so interesting because his language use is so odd, and he kind of he says, you know, think about your families, think about the sacrifice we've put in here. We've been 45 days cooped up. Dibu Martinez had a baby he hasn't met. You know, it's just a little bit more now and we can do it. And among the things he lists as you know, incredibly emotionally bonding signs of good karma is we haven't complained about the flights or the hotels at any point. And I thought that was really fascinating, because one of the reasons why he resigned in 2016 was, you know, he had been like vociferously complaining that the things weren't booked properly, that they got to the wrong place, that the times were wrong. And clearly that's something that really matters to him. You know, he's such a kind of ordered, organized person. Obviously, if a plane is delayed or the booking is wrong or the hotel is, you know, doesn't have the facilities they thought, it puts him off his game. And I thought I was quite fascinated by that, actually. I think it tells us a lot about how his mind works.
Well, he and Roy Keane should sit down for a conversation sometime, Marcela. That's all I'll say. I see Argentina, for all their riches up front, you know, Messi and Di Maria and Lautaro Martinez will lead the line. He scored 9 goals for Inter this season. I have seen pieces as well noting that they have conceded just 2 goals in 14, and somebody like Christian Romero of Spurs has come in and partnered Otamendi at centre back, and so there is a sense that this is not a lopsided team. They don't have to score 4 to win a game. So what do you suspect is a likely finish for Argentina at this World Cup, which is so impossible to predict given the paucity of games between European and South American opposition over the last couple of years?
Well, I mean, I think that's something to bear in mind, really. We haven't seen South American teams advancing to the latter stages for a while, and certainly in Russia it was entirely European. It was like a glorified Euro Cup towards the end of the World Cup. There was no non-European squads there. So we need to see what, you know, how long-standing that difference in competitiveness is going to be. I don't know if South America is having a bad moment historically, or if it's just reduced its kind of impact on the world stage as its own power within FIFA has diminished, or what it is that's going on. Certainly, a lot of these players are playing competitively in Europe all the time, and I don't just mean Argentinians, South Americans generally. So they should be up to playing against the people they face week in, week out. Also, though, it's worth, I think, highlighting that the World Cup is full of surprises. As I say, in 2002, Argentina arrived first and hailed as favourites and left first, and it's happened before. Colombia in '94 were favourites of their region and left before anyone else. So at any point this can end. I think we're all expecting very much Argentina to remain past the group stages, and that, speculating, is it going to be France? Is it going to be who we're facing? But I wouldn't say it's a given that Europe is going to pose the tough competition. I think it's more likely to happen that we see a giant of world football go home early because of some, narrative that happened, a little drama that just, VAR completely shifts a lot of our expectations. A game that goes to penalties, who knows? Personally, I'm preparing myself for a full month's work. I want us to be there until the bitter end, like we were in Brazil, which was actually completely unexpected.
This is probably too complicated a question to answer in one answer, but I'll put you under pressure anyway. The place of the football team in Argentina, as opposed to, I don't know, the dark days of the 70s where that World Cup was going on against a dreadful backdrop for that win, and then 86 and Maradona, it felt like just the most important thing to Argentinian people from afar. In 2022, is the football team as central to identity, and is it the big topic always?
So, by way of an anecdotal example, my brother and his mates the other day went out into the streets asking random people, what would you rather, the country doing well economically and the social situation stabilizing, or Argentina winning the World Cup? It's worth pointing out this country is at its worst economic point in decades. We are facing hyperinflation. Things are really like at bursting point, and people said we want to win the World Cup with incredibly brilliant remarks like, well, the country doing well, the economy, how long can that last? The cup's forever. And to my utter astonishment, one of the ministers of work and finance on television said just yesterday or the day before, we don't need to worry about the inflation now. We can, the only important thing now is to win the World Cup. So you have the government saying it and the people in the street. There isn't yet a World Cup fever. I mean, there's lots of advertising, there's of course, a lot of, media attention, but you don't get the sense that it's quite kicked off yet. But the first game is at 7 a.m. on a school day, and all state schools have already written to parents saying, we're starting late, so don't worry about coming in the morning. I think we still have that kind of sense that this is the most important thing. And there's obviously also people who go, thank God it's the World Cup because I'm going to go shopping. There's no one anywhere.
Yeah.
I can catch up on my reading or whatever. But I think it's still very much there. Argentina loves football in a way that very many football-loving nations love football. So a lot of people have a first and everlasting love for their club. And then we get swept up in the frenzy of the national furor. But, it's not... If if they don't play well, if things go wrong, if it's like 2018, then people do switch off and condemn and criticize.
Yeah.
It's not but yeah.
And I mean, that is the magic of the World Cup. Like growing up, the thought that the kids in Argentina are off school today and will be off school tomorrow, and fever has gripped everyone for 1 month is kind of one of the rare uncomplicated joys, I think. However, this World Cup is very complicated. To what extent have the issues in Qatar, be they social or the treatment of migrant workers, been to the fore of the conversation? Here, I would say it has overshadowed the build-up to the World Cup massively. I don't know to what extent that's true in Argentina. We don't have a team participating, so it may well be different.
No, I think it has. Not quite with the intensity as I saw in the UK. I came here, a week ago, and I think the US and European media are really all guns blazing, and the toxicity of a lot of the accusations level at Qatar is quite it's quite extreme in a way. Argentina isn't that bothered, I think, by a lot of the issues, but definitely the LGBT issue is big here. We have very recently legalized abortion, and so there's a great mood of change and of tolerance and of bodily self-determination. And gay marriage has been legal here for a lot longer than in many countries. So that is part of the discourse. Qatar feels so far away, and there's not really that much Middle Eastern immigration in a country of immigrants from everywhere. Well, actually, that's not true. We've had a Syrian president, but there's not that much orthodoxy present. In Argentina, immigrants come and become Argentinian really quickly. So I found, and this may be, I don't know if I've thought it through enough. I found a certain level of honing in on things like seeing the wearing of a hijab as oppression towards women, or quite a lot of the fact that women maybe can't wear a bikini on the beach. That's gaining quite a lot of traction, which I think is slightly frivolous and perhaps misses the point. But then someone was saying to me yesterday, but there's no, if you live in London, then you live with people from everywhere, really all the time. So you're not as surprised by the clothes. I find there's a lot of emphasis on what women wear historically in every culture that slightly detracts from the real issues. But the workers' rights, I haven't seen aired so much. Mind you, this is a country that has domestic workers from neighbouring countries working in quite rough conditions in many, many households. So it'd be good if that conversation seeped through. If we could unionize domestic workers on the back of the Qatar World Cup, that would be something.
Marcela, as ever, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marcela Mora y Araujo with us from Argentina. And our football show coverage and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky, all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.